So what I want to do today is go over 5 of the biggest lies that we're told about money. These are things that I learned the hard way, so let's jump right into it. The first point that I want to talk about is climbing the corporate ladder. This is what we're all taught to do. Go to school, study hard, get good grades so you can get a good degree, so you can get a good job. That way you can ultimately climb the corporate ladder and earn a bigger salary. So the way it works is like this. You want to get a good job, and then you're going to work your way up. You're going to go from associate, analyst, to VP, to director, and maybe even get to one of those executive roles. Maybe you can become a CEO one day. But this is not what wealthy people are working for. Wealthy people are not working to climb the corporate ladder. Wealthy people are working to own the corporate ladder. Now, the interesting thing about this was, growing up, I was never told or knew that you could even do that. I never knew that you could own the corporate ladder, but this is what wealthy people are working for. Because when you're working to climb the corporate ladder, the one thing that you're working for is a salary. You're working for a payment for your labor. But that's not what wealthy people do. Wealthy people are looking for equity. They're working for the profits. So when you work for a company, you work 8 hours and then you get paid for 8 hours. When you own the company, now, you don't have to actually work in the company. You might, depending on what your position is, but you don't necessarily have to as the owner of a company. When you own the company, now what you're working for is at the end of the year, how much cash is left over in the bank account. Here's the thing, if you just follow the traditional system where you go to school and you get a job and that's how you make money, well, then you're just one step away from being broke, because you're relying on your salary and your salary only. What happens if you get sick and you can't go to work? What happens if your company is run into the ground by the executives? What happens if you lose your job? You get laid off, you get fired. Then what? Well, now you lose your income, and now you have to scramble. If you don't have any savings, you're going to have to go into debt to continue funding your lifestyle until you can go out and find another salary. This is why you want to think a little bit bigger. What wealthy people are working for is they're working to own the corporate ladder, not just working to climb the corporate ladder. The second point that I want to talk about has to do with our money, or at least what we consider money, because most of us would consider our paper dollars, our cash, money. I grew up in a traditional Indian house. My parents are immigrants from a state in India called Punjab, and the traditional Indian culture is a save healthy culture. So growing up, I was always taught about the importance of saving money, and if I wanted to become wealthy, the way that I do that is by, one, getting a good paying job, like by becoming a doctor, and then I save the majority of my money. But the interesting thing about that is, if I took $10,000 30 years ago and I buried this into the backyard and I just let it sit there, well, 30 years ago, this $10,000 would have been able to buy twice as much as what this $10,000 could today. This $10,000 lost half, 50% of its buying power over the last 30 years. Our cash, our dollars, are a liability for us to hold on to. This is where things get very interesting, because we're always taught about the importance of saving money. The banks always say, save your money. It's good to save your money in the bank. But the interesting thing is, if banks followed their own advice for saving money, then the banks would be broke. See, as soon as you deposit your cash in the bank, you think it's an asset. But for the banks, your deposits are a liability, because the cash that you're keeping in the bank needs to be spent. The banks need to invest this money as fast as possible, because they don't want to keep this cash on their balance sheet. It's a liability for them. A liability is something that takes money away from your pocket. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. So what does the bank do? Well, as soon as you deposit your cash into the bank, which you think is an asset, the bank turns around, takes this liability for them, and then they're going to lend it out. As soon as the bank lends out this cash, it becomes an asset for them. I like to diagram this through a triangle. I call this my quadruped theory, because if you want to live a fulfilled life, you have to understand how money plays a part in your life. Because while money itself isn't going to make you happy, if you don't have money, it can make you very, very, very miserable. So at the bottom of this quadruped triangle, I have physical fitness. If you want to live a healthy and happy life, you have to be fit in these 4 areas. And at the bottom is physical fitness, which means you have to be physically fit. Now, this doesn't mean you got to have a six-pack, but what that means is, if you're dying on your deathbed because you're morbidly obese, it doesn't matter how much money you have. The only thing you're going to care about is being healthy again. So you want to make sure that you're physically healthy, that way you can at least live your life. After that, you want to be mentally fit. If you are anxious, you're struggling with anxiety, you're struggling with depression, you're not happy, you're not surrounded by people that love you, you have a bunch of toxic people in your life, it doesn't matter how much money you have. I could give you $10 million today. That more money is just going to make you more miserable because now you're going to realize how crappy of a life you have. If you are struggling with anxiety, you're struggling with depression, you're struggling with these things, you can't find this happiness, where you should be investing your money right now is in a therapist. Go into rehab, go find some sort of therapy, even if it's some sort of alternative therapy. Go find out how you can heal your mental health, because if you don't have this healthy mental health, you're not going to be able to go out and work and do things for financial success. You're not going to want to. You're not going to see the purpose. And even if you do, because you think, oh, if I have more money, I'll start to be happy, people will like me, I'll have friends, I'll be surrounded by happy people, I'll get these toxic people away. You're just going to be more miserable, because then you're going to realize that money wasn't the solution. So you have to take care of your mental health. And then you got to take care of your spiritual health. Now, this doesn't have to mean religion. When I talk about spiritual health, I'm talking about your purpose. Why are you on this earth? What are you waking up every single day to do? And this is something you want to start thinking about sooner rather than later, because, you know, that's why the saying is, those who retire early die early. Because when you work at a job for 40, 45 years and that's all you do, and you hate your job and you sit there, you just work there, that way you can one day hopefully retire, and then you hit that retirement point, well, then what happens? You sit at home on your sofa with nothing to do, and then you start getting sick. You start to go into a whole bunch of holes physically, mentally, because you don't have a purpose. You don't have a reason to wake up every single day except to cry and yell at whoever's on TV. And this is where you want to start figuring out your purpose sooner rather than later. What are you here for? What is your purpose on this earth? How can you help people? That way you can start working for your purpose sooner, because if you have millions of dollars, but you have no reason to get out of bed, you're going to be more miserable. This is where being financially fit has the biggest benefit and the most power. Because now when you have financial health, financial fitness, you're wealthy, you understand money, now you can live a more happy and a more fulfilled life, because now more money is just that icing on the cake. It will help you live a more fulfilled life. It will let you live the more happy life. It will let you do the things that you want to do. It'll help you take care of yourself. It'll help you take care of your family. It'll help you take care of your community. The fourth point that I want to talk about has to do with this concept of thinking bigger, but not in the traditional way, because most of us have limiting beliefs based off of what we're told around us and what our environment is. I know for me as well, I was told many times that I could never make it as an entrepreneur, that somebody who looks like me, who talks like me, who has a turban, who has a beard will never be able to make it on YouTube talking about things like finance. And you know, when you hear these type of things, it can start to affect you, and you start to believe, oh, maybe you're right. Maybe because I was grown up in a certain way, maybe because of who my parents are, maybe because of the color of my skin, I can't achieve something. You know, growing up, I was always told to become a doctor. I've talked about this many times, but I grew up in this traditional Indian house. And when you come from this type of culture, you know, your parents want you to become successful. And in my house, that meant I had to become a doctor. I had no other options. And when I told my parents that I didn't want to be a doctor, they didn't believe it. It took my dad a long time to believe that I wasn't going to be a doctor. It took my mom a year and a half to actually believe that her son wasn't going to be a doctor. It was a very tough time. And I remember going through arguments with my parents and my family, because I would get calls from random family members saying, Jaspreet, you're disgracing the family. Why aren't you doing something good in your life? Why do you want to go do this entrepreneurship thing? Do something that will bring pride to the family. Do something that will make you successful. Do something that will help you take care of your family. And when you hear these things again and again, you tell yourself, no, don't believe it. That's not true. But there's still that little voice in your brain. What if you're right? And I remember, you know, talking to my parents, I want to be an entrepreneur. What if one day I could be a CEO of a company? And I remember hearing again and again, you can't be a CEO. You have no business experience. How can somebody like you be the CEO? How can you run a company? Now, the goal isn't just to be a CEO. After I learned about the corporate ladder, you want to learn to own the company. But these were the types of things that I learned. And I always thought crazy. I always wanted to do big things. I just didn't know how I was going to do it, but it makes it very difficult. And this is where you have to remember that it is possible, because you know, a lot of us don't have this type of support system that's going to say, hey man, or hey woman, hey girl, whatever, you got this. Just stick with it. Just fight through it. You'll get it. Just keep working. And that's one of those things where, you know, all I can say is think bigger, because I always thought that I thought big. But then even when I started this YouTube channel, I remember joking around with my friends saying, you know, if Minority Mindset ever gets 100,000 subscribers, I made it. That's it. And if we hit 1 million subscribers, I would just shut down the channel, because I never thought it was possible. And here we are today. We have passed 1 million subscribers. And this is me, somebody who thought big, and yet I was putting these limiting beliefs on myself. The first step to achieving any sort of success is having a bigger mindset. You have to understand and believe it's possible for you, because if you don't, if we just keep hating on others, if you keep telling yourself you can't do it, if you keep coming up with excuses, you will never be able to achieve that success. And the fifth point that I want to talk about has to do with the idea of trusting the system, because if you just trust the system and you do what everybody else does, you're going to end up like the majority of people. And the majority of people are broke, they have no investments, they have no savings, and they're miserable. So what I want you to do is start asking the question, why? Start questioning things, because this is what I did. And as soon as I started doing that, you start to go down this emotional and like lots of realization things happening at the same time. And you're going to start to realize that, oh, maybe you shouldn't just blindly trust the system, because the reality is it's very profitable to keep you poor. It's very profitable to keep you financially uneducated. And this is where, as soon as you start to go down that financial education journey, you start to not trust the system, and you start to make decisions for yourself that are different than what the majority of people have always done and keep telling you to do. I'll give you a few examples. Banks make money when you are financially uneducated, because if you are more financially educated, you're not going to go to the bank and just keep borrowing money to buy a whole bunch of things that you can't afford, that you don't need, because now you're going to realize, oh, if I buy this $1,000 TV with money I don't have, this $1,000 TV is going to cost me $2,000. And if more and more people realize that, you wouldn't have so many big bank branches all across the country and across the world, because banks are making billions and billions of dollars funding people to buy things that they can't afford and that they don't need. If you enjoyed this short clip from my longer videos, here's another clip that I think you'll love. And while you're at it, if you're interested in learning more about how to start generating passive income, our team put together an amazing guide that goes over what passive income is, how to start generating passive income, and different passive income strategies. These are things that you can start doing even if you don't have a lot of money. So if you want to read this free guide on how to start generating passive income for free, all you got to do is click that button right over there. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep hustling.